Welcome to Popcorn Psychology, the podcast where we watch blockbuster movies and psychoanalyze them. My name is Brittany Brownfield, and I'm a child therapist, and I'm joined by
Ben Stover, individual therapist.
Hannah Espinoza, marriage and family therapist.
We're all licensed clinical professional counselors, also known as therapists, who practice out of Chicago. Even though we are licensed mental health professionals, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes and to fulfill our love of dissecting pop culture in all forms.
Please remember that even though we are all licensed therapists, we aren't your therapist.
If you are struggling with mental health symptoms, please find a local mental health provider.
Hello, everybody. There's been a murder on the dance floor because today we are finally talking about Saltburn.
Barf.
So Saltburn, we made sure to do early this season of our podcast because it has been requested, I think, as soon as it hit the screens. As soon as it hit the screens, people have been asking us to do Saltburn. Right off the top, I think we should do a content warning in that Ben does not like this movie.
It's very important to point that out at this juncture.
I'm just going to point out that I didn't point that out.
Well, we needed to get ahead of it.
We did.
I did say barf.
You already said barf. Yes, exactly.
We heard you.
I mean, the bathtub scene is barf.
And?
That's it. Just full context. Barf.
So, in talking about Saltburn, we will be talking about Oliver, obviously, and antisocial personality disorder. We will also be talking about the family he invades, conquers, and we'll be talking about family systems. Saltburn is about a young man named Oliver Quick who enters Oxford and slowly ingratiates himself into the life of his very rich, ancestral wealth friend,
yes,
Felix, who eventually takes him home to Saltburn, the estate of which he lives, for the summer. And by the end of that summer, that family has been cut in half. So I assume that everyone wants us to talk about Oliver when they want us to talk about Saltburn.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's part of the reason why people have been requesting it so much.
Yes. I assume everyone wants us to answer the question, what's wrong with Oliver Quick?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course they do. Because this is essentially a Joker origin story, so.
So, I think there's only really one answer to what's quote-unquote wrong with Oliver Quick, which is that he is displaying all of the classic traits of antisocial personality disorder.
Ding, ding.
Absolutely.
Ding.
Couldn't be more correct.
And typically when people say things like sociopath, psychopath, stuff like that, as we've said in many podcasts before, what they're actually usually talking about is someone with antisocial personality disorder traits and tendencies.
Yes.
Correct. Neither psychopath nor sociopath are any longer used as diagnostic terms. Mm-hmm. I am not sure at what point sociopath got removed from the DSM, but it is absolutely not a real term. What people used to use it for is they used to differentiate that a psychopath was someone who would kill coldly and show no reactions, whereas a sociopath was someone who would only act out strongly once angry, and then the bad things would happen. However, neither of those terms are real or used, so any of that data is historical use only and no longer considered accurate.
It's not clinical language that we use in any way, shape, or form.
And honestly, it's basically a slur. Yeah, that's the way it's used. It's never used in a clinically helpful, appropriate, loving way.
Yeah.
Which obviously, in our line of work, with every diagnosis, I hope everyone's using those diagnoses in considerate, thoughtful ways.
Yes.
I guess that's basically one of the tenets of why this podcast exists. Is to help people be more thoughtful about the terms they like to throw around.
Agreed.
Yeah, and while we're speaking of being thoughtful, if you guys could take a second real quick and leave us a review or add a like to our social media pages, we'd really appreciate it. And when you do use those reviews, please know that we thoughtfully also read them.
So, antisocial personality disorder. Here's a quick psychoeducation corner for anyone interested. So the symptoms of antisocial, as per the Cleveland Clinic, is the website I'm currently looking at for reference. Physical aggression, hostility, or violence towards others, check. Reckless or impulsive behavior, Check. Breaking the law or disregarding rules and social norms. Check. Feeling angry, more powerful, or better than others, so superiority. Check. Using wit, flattery, and charm to manipulate, lie, or deceive others for personal gain or enjoyment.
Check. Checkity check.
Not taking responsibility for actions or behaviors. Check. Not showing remorse, regret, or concern for behaviors. And that's a check, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think going down the line, little Mr. Oliver hits every single beat.
And I think one thing that we need to point out here that we don't know about Oliver is that most of the time when someone, maybe all of the time, actually, I could be wrong about that, people are diagnosed with conduct disorder as children. I don't know if that's a criteria portion or not, though.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that oftentimes these behaviors start displaying themselves from a very young age.
Yes.
Yes.
They don't always, but they really do show up quite often. And it's usually a long-standing pattern of complete disregard for societal norms.
Yeah, it's very ends justify the means, not really getting hung up on what you and I would get hung up on morally. You know, not having sort of the social norms barriers between themselves and what they want.
Yes.
Correct. Human beings frequently are seen as a means to an end, and there's very little consideration for consequences. And it's important to know that it's called antisocial, not because these people who live with this diagnosis tend to avoid human contact. That can happen, but they can also be quite gregarious and charming and
Persuasive.
It could be very charismatic, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It doesn't mean they want to hide away under the covers away from everyone in a cave somewhere.
Well, people say this a lot about like serial killers, right? That you should be able to feel them almost when they come upon you.
Yeah.
But that's not really how it goes. Like Ted Bundy, real life person, had a lot of charisma, it seemed, to the point that like one of his closest friends, Ann Rule, who was like a true crime person, worked beside him during a lot of his stuff and never caught on.
Yeah.
Until I think some time after the fact.
Yeah.
Or until there were a lot of clues that made it undeniable that it was Ted. So Oliver is one of those people that is, he can be charming. And I think that's a good distinction.
Yes.
He can turn on charm when he wants to. I think something I noticed, especially the first time I watched the movie, is there's this definite shift that occurs within Oliver when he decides to put on more of a sexual undertone in his conversations with the mom.
Yes.
Elsbeth and Venetia. It's like halfway through the movie he switches into this more sexual, domineering, provocative person.
Yes.
Like a cat, like feline almost in nature. And before that, he presents as a typical kind of like nerd, like a fish out of water at Oxford.
Yeah, like shy and maybe looks a little unsure of himself. He's very observant.
Yes.
But he hides it really well when he is more in this like innocent guy. I'm just like trying to be like everybody else.
Yeah. But you can see when he first shows up to Oxford that he's wearing what he assumes is like the uniform. Like he gets made fun of because he's wearing the scarf. I think someone says, I don't know if it's Farley, but someone offhandedly says like, oh, he's even wearing the scarf, like kind of making fun of him in passing.
Yeah.
Because he definitely is dressed like when he goes to the first dinner and he's wearing the sweater over his shoulders.
Yes.
Like he is dressed like he thinks an Ivy League student dresses. And because that's coming from a persona and not from an authentic place, it immediately, ironically, not ostracizes him, but it keeps him separate.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes him look like a dork who's trying. He looks, you know what he feels like? A tryhard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a tryhard from Jump.
Which is interesting because as I'm sitting here thinking about it, his family house that we end up seeing is quite large. And it doesn't seem like his family has trouble with money. Clearly not the way that he describes it, of course.
Oh, they're comfortably middle class.
Yeah.
Very comfortably, yeah. They're living out in the English suburbs doing just fine.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, this idea that he didn't know what it was like, or he wouldn't know how to draw on what to be like here, I think is interesting, because it's clearly just a part of this is how he was always going to go to Oxford.
Yeah. Which could, I guess, if we're going to pull in the symptoms of antisocial, I mean, one thing we say a lot on this podcast is Oliver stays, for a movie where he's the main character, he stays an enigma for the whole of the movie.
Yes.
Other than the glimpse we see of his actual family when he goes home, he still remains a mystery. Yes. In the sense of, like, we don't know what he was like as a kid. We don't really know the dynamic with him and his parents, other than they seem, I don't know, they seem somewhat aware of his behavior.
Yes.
But it's hard to gauge their comfort level with him. They seem frustrated. Well, the dad seems frustrated, but his mom seems kind of like on edge a little bit.
I think they've been aware he's dangerous for his whole life, and if we go with the theory that most of them start displaying these behaviors since childhood, they know he's extraordinarily smart because they don't have legacy lineage for him to get into Oxford.
True.
And they know that he has anger streaks and likely runs hot and cold, and
they know he lies.
And he engages only when he wants to, I'm sure. So he has likely been extraordinarily manipulative and can flip up and down into his manipulative or angry states, or possibly even destructive, is my guess. And so why we're all detecting that there's some kind of very disquieted, like, discomfort with the family, I think, is probably because they know about the things he does when he's unhappy.
Yeah. Because I think we definitely get a feel from the parents that he's probably, like you were saying, like, we talk about antisocial, usually there's stuff that are happening prior to 18.
Yes.
If it's severe enough, it will get labeled diagnosis conduct. He strikes me as someone who probably hasn't. That's maybe flying under the radar. Because what I will notice with his mom is she seems to deal with him by not. Yep. I could tell even from that one scene. And the fact that because if I showed up at my mom's house and she hasn't heard from me and I haven't gone home for the summer or whatever, she'd be like, where have you been? Like, there would be some sense of that power dynamic where she feels like she's allowed to question me and kind of get up in my grill a little bit. And his mom doesn't do any of that.
No.
And as soon as Oliver's like, I should just go, she's very, what's what I'm looking for? She backs down very quickly. Let him go if he wants to go. And his dad's the one that steps in and is like, no, your mom made a cake. Your mom made lunch. Don't, like, be thoughtful about your mom. But she's like, I don't want to, it's like she's scared of conflict. So she feels like someone who may be engaged with Oliver by denial.
I mean, I think there's a strong component of that, and I think also it's likely that he is in firm control, and that your sense of, like, they learned to deal with him by not probably came through trial and error, where when they tried to clamp down on him, he turned up.
Or even that maybe he's embarrassing in the sense that, like, he lies and they've caught him lying, but it's so uncomfortable to confront the fact that he's being, like, weird like that, that they're just like, oh, you know how Oliver is? Like, I could also see them as just writing him off as eccentric, instead of really recognizing, like, that's not typical behavior to be that dishonest. Like, it seems like they work to maintain the fantasy that Oliver is selling, because they both recognize that he will tell stories or whatever, but then at the same time be like, and he's the top scholar, like, repeating the lies he's told them that are so audaciously big, which is also part of the superiority, right? That of the antisocial, is that when he's when he's telling his parents about school, it can't just be like good enough
Right.
that he's at Oxford.
Right.
He has to be the
Right.
top scholar at Oxford, which is wild and easy probably to disprove.
And I wonder if a part of that is knowing that they have to stroke his ego in order to deal with him. Like maybe a part of the reason why they bring those things up is because they know they have to appease him in some way in order to keep it peaceful.
Or maybe things are easier when he's not around.
Yeah, that's what I
Especially
was
if he has
thinking.
siblings?
That's what I was thinking too. I wonder, as soon as
female
he said they had
siblings?
2 sisters, my mind just went like,
Yikes.
yikes.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for families to kind of adjust to a life without someone that has caused chaos and be not necessarily the most upset when they retreat from the dynamic.
And also, like, what a nice situation for them that they can just brag to all their neighbors and family that their son's at Oxford, and they can just leave it at that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think if something is true about Oliver is he can be very off-putting at times.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments in the movie where he's trying to fit in, especially in the beginning, and he's not quite pulling it off, right? He's almost like trying different angles with Felix, like the being very like parental with him and like being his little lapdog didn't work, and it actually put Felix off.
Yep.
And I think he figured out that Felix is a helper. Felix likes to help people.
Yep.
And so he got him with the money thing. And then when everything blew up with the cleaning and he gets pissed off and then doesn't invite him to the pub, he gets him with my dad died. And then he was in.
Yep.
Yep.
It took him a while to figure Felix out.
It did. It did.
And then once he got it, he got it.
And I think another thing I saw that really caught my attention was how fast he dropped that friend.
Oh, that friend was only his friend because nobody else was his friend. And to be on Oliver's side a little bit, that friend sucked.
Yeah, he wasn't great.
He's
screamed at
definitely
him.
the friend you only have because no one else wants to get drinks. And so I could definitely see you dropping that friend eventually. But the
Yeah.
way he drops it is so wild. Like, literally, like, I can't see you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Within
well, and
moments.
and that's what I mean. How
Yeah.
how coldly he drops. I mean, this guy. It's notable how quickly he dismissed him.
Dismisses him
And
very
callously.
quickly. Like, yeah, that was sad.
I mean, he was sitting at a table with him and got up and went over and then ignored and then acted like he didn't exist.
Right after the guy
that
went to the
is
bathroom.
Brutal.
Yeah. And I think the movie does a good job of post that of how you see Oliver like slowly change aesthetically, behaviorally. Like, I really like the shot in the movie when he gets offered cigarettes and he says, I don't smoke. And then the very next shot is him lighting up a cigarette
Yeah.
to smoke with Felix.
Yeah.
That this movie does show very quickly that Oliver has no problem slowly morphing into someone else to get his needs met. And honestly, when that friend that he had that he ditched confronts him later, I really don't think Oliver cared that he got called a bootlicker.
I don't think he cared either. I don't think he cared because I think he'll do anything he has to. It's a means to an end. He'll do anything he has to be friends with Felix. And he doesn't give a shit what that looks like to other people.
No, he doesn't. I mean, he's on a mission.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an Eat the Rich movie. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
He's an idyllic serial killer, is what he is. He has an ideal in his head, and he's going to destroy this family. He is on an entire mission the whole time. He is set in his brain about what he's going to do. He has a whole mission, and nothing is going to deter him from it.
Yeah. And I think once you kind of know the end of the movie, right, that he's been engineering things since
Yeah,
the
the whole time.
bike incident.
Yeah.
When you watch it again, you can see how he picks Felix early.
Yeah.
Like, that's a kid that has everyone around him. Like, clearly a lot of people go to Oxford, right, because it's one of the best. And I think him going to Oxford is a sign of how much he wants and feels like he deserves a bigger life. Because I think the worst thing that's ever happened to Oliver is the fact that he is a boring life. You know what I mean? Like, that's why the biggest crime to the rich in this movie is being boring. So you can be poor, but you better be reality TV poor.
Yeah.
Like you better be like the way he sells himself, drug dealing parents, having to make your mom vomit. And so he learns very early how to get people's attention.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think the worst thing that ever happened to Oliver is that he is a very vanilla, white bread story.
Yeah.
It is just boring. And I think that's also interesting how quickly he figures out that he needs to be entertaining. And that he will do whatever he has to do to be entertaining. He lies so easily and will grow from those lies. There's nothing audacious enough for him to say about his background.
Yeah.
Especially when you know it's all fake.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he comes to Oxford because he wants a certain version of his life, right? And I think, like I said, it feels like he deserves it. He picks Felix as the boy. And then as we see, now that we know how the movie, like the flashbacks at the end, that he engineers his way into Felix. And what I did notice watching it this time, and I've watched it several times, that he really, his plan goes into effect once he gets excluded from that Christmas party. I think that felt like the final proof to him that he is not included. And that night during the Christmas party, what does he choose to do? He chooses to play pool right next to the party where he can hear it, he can pretty much see it, but he's not a part of it. And I think that drives him berserk. Not berserk, but I think it bothers the hell out of him, right?
Yeah.
I think that is to him, like I said, is like the final nail in the coffin of like, I am not included. And all I want is to be in there with them. And so he starts, the bike plan happens like the next week or the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's stalking prey. Just straight up, he is a predator stalking prey.
Yeah.
And it is terrifying, the depths of thought he places into how thoroughly he's going to ingratiate himself into this group and create opportunities for himself to do whatever the hell he wants.
And he starts making out with that girl that was excluded also from Felix's group. Like, I think that I was wondering when I watched it with you this time, Hannah, like, is this revenge? Like him almost sleeping with her and then saying, I don't even think Felix will notice. Is that him getting back at her for talking shit about the way he dresses and trying to keep him out? Like, she didn't want him to come to that party thing. So I think that was him also maybe trying to like eliminate her a little bit. Like when you look at it more from this lens, like the Machiavellian lens, like you can kind of see more of these moves he's making. Because I think on like the first watch of this, or like the first assumption I made when I first saw it, because of the discussion around it about like, is this a movie about a boy who's obsessed with another boy, like, and wants to be with him? So from that lens, it was like, is he trying to like fuck Felix through this girl? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's how I thought of it the first time. But then now this time watching it through the more therapy lens, I was like, I think he's just using her. Like good old fashioned using her.
Yeah, I think so
and
too.
then trying to make her feel bad. And that's it. No pseudo-sexual thing under that.
No. I think he was weaponizing access to her to learn what she knew, and also striking revenge on both her and Felix. Everything he does is calculated. There's nothing that's happening by accident.
Yeah. And he never looks like when he's watching Felix have sex with that girl outside while smoking a cigarette. Like, he never looks like he's worried about getting caught. He's cool as a cucumber.
It feels like we're starting to lead right into this dark triad. Well, maybe we should take a little break here, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what the dark triad is, and we'll go from there. So when we talk about the dark triad personality, it's typically one that can get assigned to the examination of a serial murderer, which Felix is. Without question. These are ritualistic, planned, specific murders that he is undertaking. And so the dark triad is a 3-component part of a personality which contains narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And when psychopathy is defined in more of this forensic landscape, it's different than the clinical one in which we work. And it's important that we talk about that, because that is a term that is used by the FBI and other places when they're doing assessments, and they have the psychopathy checklist revised in which they run through these tests, that these measure what they identify as a distinct cluster of personality traits and socially deviant behaviors of an individual, which fall into 4 factors: interpersonal, affective, lifestyle, and antisocial. These traits include glibness, superficial charm, a grandiose sense of self-worth, pathological lying, and the manipulation of others. Now, doesn't this sound just a little bit like our boy here?
Yeah, Mr. Quick.
Yes, definitely.
Just a little
Definitely.
bit. And then the affective traits. So when we say affect, we're looking at people's facial and bodily reactions, their tone of voice, their eye contact, etc. We see a lack of remorse and or guilt, a shallow affect, a lack of empathy, failure to accept responsibility for behavior. Kind of like what we talked about in antisocial personality disorder. Now, yet again, when we watch Oliver, do we see an ounce of remorse for a goddamn thing in him?
No.
Not one time.
No.
The only time he showed fear was when he thought he was going to be caught. When he got taken home. But beyond that, Oliver shows zero concern for anybody, and his affect is quite generally very flat.
Yeah.
He shows very little facial expressions. He doesn't react to stuff. He's just kind of stone-faced all the time.
Yeah.
Which was, I'm sure, very deliberate acting, right? And
Yeah.
when you see people display this dark triad personality type, you're looking at this manipulative, goal-directed, I'm better than everybody else. And then you see this psychopathy where they don't feel remorse, empathy, guilt. They just are enabled to do whatever they want when they want to, and they are completely detached from the norms of social impact. I can't think of a single way Oliver would not fit that.
Yeah. I am curious what you guys think about, and I think this could just be the fact that this is a movie and a fictional character.
Sure.
I think where people might want to push back on us about what you just said about like the remorse part, Ben, is how distraught he is after Felix dies. The crying and the weeping and then the sexual behavior with the grave. But the agony he is demonstrating post Felix's death, I think people do read as remorse. Like, is he regretting Felix dying? Like, what's he sad about? I think would be a question I would want to ask us listening to us talk about this.
I don't think he was sad about Oliver dying.
Felix, you mean?
Right, Felix. I don't think Oliver was sad about Felix dying at all. I think he was celebrating a kill.
Oh.
And the only thing perhaps that he was sad about would be sadness in the way that Joker would be sad if he actually killed Batman.
Whatever. I don't know about all
Think
that.
about the speech Joker gives Batman in Dark Knight, though. He's telling him, like, I'd be bored without you. I don't know what I would do. You complete me.
Yeah.
I think this may be Oliver's first kill of a human. I think he's probably killed animals before, but I don't know that he's killed humans.
I feel like he knows a little bit too much about all the different ways that he kills people in the film.
That's true.
I think that he knows a little bit too much about it for it to be his first time dabbling with what he's doing.
He's very good at killing people and it looking like an accident.
Yeah.
So if we know that to be true,
Yeah.
then he's figured that out somehow. You know, This is 2006, so he could just do good old-fashioned research where that's not traceable, right? Like not have a paper trail via the Google.
Right.
Well, what are you thinking, Hannah?
So that's really interesting, Ben, that you bring that up. I was thinking how he's not remorseful of killing him. I definitely agree with that. I don't think he's remorseful about that at all. I thought that it's more of that he can never possess Oliver.
Right.
He wants to wear his skin.
Exactly. Like he'll never have a chance to get at him in any other way. He'll never be able, which is why it kind of feels like why he's like, I mean, this is going to sound really dramatic, but why he's kind of like sexually assaulting the dirt. Like because he never got Felix in the way that he wanted him.
Yeah.
Vulnerable and like drooling, which is what feels like is what he wanted.
Well, it's part of his
Felix.
Right, it's part of his ritual.
Yes.
Because everybody else he goes through something sexual with before they die.
That's a good point.
So, yeah.
And I did mention to Hannah when we were watching it this time together that with both Felix and Venetia, it's like he gives them a chance to fall into a sexual romantic relationship with them, but when they pull back, when they don't engage with that, he then decides to kill them. Like with Felix, he goes in for a kiss in the maze. When Felix pulls away, he's like, well then, in his mind, I'm thinking of him going like, well then fine, fuck it. And he lets him drink the champagne, right? And then he pukes so that he doesn't ingest the poison.
Yeah.
And then with Venetia, he also goes in for the kill to try to like manage her by kissing her because they have they already have like a sexual history. And when she rejects him, he's like, well then fine. So it's almost like he gives them the opportunity to be managed by him in a relationship, in a romantic sexual relationship. And then once that is obviously not going to work, he gets rid of them.
Yeah. So
once they don't fit what he could get from them, he will discard them.
Yep.
And it makes me wonder, I know one thing that I wondered about the film in general was why did he never try to have sex with the mom?
We don't know that he didn't when he moves in.
Well, and that's what I was thinking.
Later.
And so part of me is curious if a part of what happened is that he did attempt that.
I mean, I think he did.
And she said no, and then this is what she got.
That like he was going to be the heir no matter what.
Yeah.
Whether he was going to be the heir through marriage or like a
Sure.
romantic thing.
Yeah.
Or he was going to be the heir through death.
Yeah.
And yeah, they went the death route. Because because he definitely was flirting with he it's almost like he was practicing on her.
Yeah.
And then he threw it full force at Venetia and then Farley.
Yeah.
You can almost like see him gaining practice and like confidence as the movie goes on with these specific skills.
Yeah.
And mining Elsbeth for information on Venetia, immediately weaponizing that information on Venetia,
Which is Machiavellianism.
yeah. And I think what I noticed too is when he does it with Venetia, when he's like, you're so beautiful, when he's whispering behind her ear, he sounds fake.
Yes.
Like he sounds like he's putting on a persona. And that felt interesting to notice. Like I could feel him working her in a way that I knew he was doing, but like I really felt it this time of like he sounds fake. He sounds weird and different than he sounds in other settings.
He's playing a role. He's very aware of how he's morphing himself into what will work on her.
Yeah.
It's predator versus prey behavior of I'm going to win this interaction. And it doesn't matter what gets me off because what gets me off is beating you.
Yeah. So I think he's very self-satisfied when that scene where he's in the bathtub and he's washing the blood off after his interaction with her. He seems like a cat that's got the cream.
Yeah, he does.
Like that's the reward for him. It is interesting his need to like imbibe fluids. People probably also want to know why we think he like drank the bathwater. I don't know. Some of the choices in the script about stuff like that feel like more like movie choices.
Yes.
And I don't know.
Or like shock value.
Yeah.
Like shock value that he's doing these disturbing things. I think the bathwater thing really goes back to him wanting to possess Felix in some kind of way and not being able to get close. He wants to be him. And so he can't get as close as he wants. And so this is the only way that he can do it, by doing some like really odd things. But at the same time, I think you're right. I mean, some of it just feels like shock value. Truly.
And I guess you could argue the whole movie he's also is kind of testing limits.
Yeah.
Like, what happens if I smash a mirror? Mm-hmm. What happens if I do this? Mm-hmm. What happens if I say the eggs are too runny?
Yeah.
And make them take him back, you know? I think he does a lot of, like, testing his own limits and testing the limits of those around him.
Yeah.
And doing so in a slow, deliberate manner. He's testing the fences like a velociraptor.
Yeah, like with Farley, that's very clear because he knows he has a contentious relationship with Farley. When they're at the karaoke, when they're in karaoke,
Yeah.
you can see him feeling him out.
Yeah.
You could just fuck me instead, and like waiting to see if Farley's going to play. Mm-hmm. And Farley's more savvy than anyone else in the family.
Well, Farley's playing
His own game, yes.
Yeah,
so he's eyeing his competitors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think he's really noticing and picking up on all the different little odd things that Oliver does that don't quite add up to the persona he's trying to portray.
Yeah.
Well, Farley is not rich blind like the others
Yeah,
are.
true. Yeah.
He's not privilege blind, I guess. He's doing his own version of morphing into whatever the family demands of him from their narcissism to be allowed to stay. And what was the friend's name? The mom's friend?
Pamela.
Pamela. So
R.I.P.
Pamela and Farley were foils of each other. Pamela existed in the story as a warning to what happened to Farley if he fucks up.
Yeah, if he doesn't get his shit together.
To create tension for us as the audience to look at that and say, Farley better be on his P's and Q's and know his place. Like, be the lapdog, be around, but don't have opinions other than supportive and, playing whatever needs are presented to you, but you stay in your lane. And then once Oliver starts doing this testing behavior, that's when Farley starts elevating and starts, having those conversations with him and trying to destroy him ultimately, because he's like, I see you. I know what don't think I haven't seen what you're doing. Don't think I don't know.
Yeah. Because Farley has to play a version of that game to get his needs met.
Yes.
Correct.
And so he smells it. And he's like, this shit stinks. And I can smell you from a mile away. I would say, my only bugaboo with Oliver's presentation, which I think is just the Emerald, the director and writer, choosing story, like moving the story forward versus staying true to like the character of Oliver, is how anxious he is going on the drive to his parents' house, and then how anxious and kind of meek he acts in their house. I think with how he's shown himself any other part of the movie, I think he would have done something on the way to the house to prevent them from ever getting there, and or he would have spun something. I just feels weird that he didn't have a contingency plan for that, or that he wasn't willing to do something really, because what I was telling Hannah is I think what he would really do on the way to the house is fake a panic attack and then make Felix pull over, and then once he calmed down, switched on Felix and be like, I can't believe that you were going to take me to this triggering environment, and put Felix on his back feet in that helper role that Felix likes to be in, the savior role, and make Felix feel bad, and then they would just drive back to Saltburn.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Oliver would have been able to prevent that situation, and I think that she needed that to happen for the plot of the movie.
Yeah, it's a MacGuffin, no doubt.
And it makes me think about an example of him reacting quickly, I feel like, is when Felix brings up him messing around with Venetia.
Yeah.
And he just turns that right around almost immediately. So for him to not, and maybe he was already planning on doing that, like maybe that was always the goal, but it really feels like if he could do that, why couldn't he change something before he got to his parents' house? Like, that doesn't quite match up, but I think it is because it's just a movie choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible he read the situation that there was no deterring Felix. I mean, I think you're right, Brittany. I think in reality, we would have seen an extraordinary effort.
Like, I think he would have faked a car. I think he would have made a car crash happen before he would have let Felix get to his house. Like, grab the wheel
Maybe, but that would, if you remember, he's on a goal though, and
Yeah.
he can probably manipulate his way out of his family. And he can lie, and he can say they're full of shit. They're like, I lied because whatever, and make up something, and he'll probably trust that before he trusts the randomness of a car accident. He's too smart for that. I think faking a panic attack or any of that are valid theories, and we probably would see that, but I don't think it would reach the point that he would cause harm to himself if he hasn't completed his mission yet, because he wants that house, he wants that life, and he wants none of them in it, because I think the undertone of this movie is that he knows that level of wealth is not attainable.
No, that's ancestral wealth. Like, you have to be born into that class. That's a level of like classism that we don't understand in America.
Well, because we worship it here.
Well, and also like that there's lords, like, you know what I mean, that you can be part of the government, like,
right.
I mean, I know we have a version of that, like the Bushes, for example, but this idea that you can live in a house that existed in like the 1500s.
Right.
And your family's always lived there, and that like a king has slept in one of your bedrooms, and that's just part of it.
Yeah.
And your family always will live there, and the money that exists will be protected for you through hundreds of years of knowledge and effort and education and people you employ to protect it. Like Alfred the Daddy Butler.
They're Duncan, yes.
Yes.
So is there anything more we want to say about Oliver before we take another break and switch to the family?
No, I think we covered it.
All right. So let's take a break here and we'll be right back. Okay, the family, the prey, as we've been discussing, they aren't on paper like quote unquote good people themselves, right? I think the movie does a good job of demonstrating how like everyone kind of sucks in different ways. And so I think it is one of those things where at the end of the movie there is no clear winner or loser. I mean, I guess Oliver is the winner, but in the sense of like, do we really feel bad for this family? Like, that mom sucks, the dad is whatever. Like,
He's just so disconnected.
He feels like a classic, like, much older father who's just doing his thing, and everyone else can come along if they want.
I mean, when he said about coming to the birthday party that he thought he'd put on his suit of armor.
And then he did.
Fancy dress.
Fancy dress.
Like,
go ahead, Ben.
No, I think that was brilliant writing to illustrate just exactly what kind of character they wanted Richard E. Grant to portray with that. He was so aloof and disconnected and disquieted, disconcerted with anybody else. He's just like, meh. I think I just wear my armor because it's the thing we do here, and like I'm pretty cool. And
He's
like,
just trying to have fun.
He's just like doing exactly his thing.
Yeah, he's probably retired and never actually really worked a day in his life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, I was thinking about the family after watching it today, and I think what I noticed is we have a kind of specific setup for a dysfunctional family. Part of that is, besides the mom maybe having some of her own personality disorder things, I think that we have two parents who don't talk about anything serious.
Yeah.
And who don't talk about anything bad or anything ugly.
Anything uncomfortable.
Anything uncomfortable. And I think when you have a family where nobody talks about anything real, that what can end up happening is you can end up with a kid who's a scapegoat, who embodies all of the pain that the family is ignoring, which I think is Venetia. I think we know that she has an eating disorder. We can tell that in some ways she doesn't seem to quite be herself, or doesn't seem to be comfortable in her skin, I guess is a better way to say it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're introduced to her because she's, what does her mom say? She's been like pouring herself over all the furniture or something.
Over all the furniture.
To try to get Oliver's attention for when he comes across her.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, her mother's a model.
Yes.
Right. Her mother is a model. Exactly.
And Venetia is quite obviously not.
Well, Venetia's just a regular girl. I think what's interesting too is she dyes her hair blonde. It's very obvious it's dyed because her roots are always showing like crazy, which was a thing back then.
Yep.
You know, like horrible yellow blonde hair.
Yeah.
Bad extensions was the look even when you were rich and famous, like Paris Hilton, right? Like it's very specific to the time period. And I remember watching this time being like, I wonder if she dyes her hair blonde to try to feel closer to her mother because she's clearly a brunette.
Yeah.
And trying to... Because when you have a parent who has just demonstrates more narcissism, like Elizabeth clearly does, she makes every conversation about herself. Like there's a funny beat in the movie when she comes and sits down when the kids are at the lake, the pond or whatever in the yard. And she starts talking about how the song that's playing is about her. Yeah. And you can see this look.
Oh, at the pool. Yeah.
You can see this look kind of get exchanged between like Felix and either like Venetia or Oliver of like, here she goes again. Like they've heard the story. Every time the songs come on the radio, they know their mom is going to talk about how the song was about her, but she's not cheap enough for the song to actually, like she felt offended by the song because it insinuated that she was like cheap and cultured. In a way that she doesn't want to be associated with. Yeah. And so when you have a parent who everything comes back to them, like she has no boundaries, she wants to be entertained. As soon as Pamela becomes boring, she kicks her out. But she literally admits to that. She goes, you think she'd be interesting with how she looks, and she's not. So she has to go. That you as a kid wanting validation from your parent, like Venetia, you have to try to be like them. They have to see themselves in you to give you validation. Yeah. And so Venetia having eating disorder, Venetia dyeing her hair blonde, you know, these are all things that I think can happen organically when you have a parent who won't give you the time of day unless you're entertaining them or reminding them of themselves. Yeah. And yeah, she does become the scapegoat. The way her mom talks about her is so disgusting. It's heinous. I think that's a clip that a lot of people remember. Like if people would talk about Rosamund Pike's performance in this movie. She was like the standout actor from this movie. And when she's talking, she calls her daughter like sexually impotent. What'd she say? Sexually incontinent. Yes. What a way to call your daughter a slut. It's so crazy. Like those two words together. And instead of showing any sort of sympathy, empathy towards Venetia, so callous, so rude, and just like you're saying, like the scapegoat, like writing Venetia off as this just like slutty, fat, crazy girl with a useless eating disorder. And I don't know how she got that way. Yeah, exactly. And I think in this kind of dysfunctional family, you need someone like Venetia to be the scapegoat, because for Elizabeth to really acknowledge that Venetia's doing stuff that's harmful, she would also have to acknowledge, why is my daughter doing this? Like, if she was to be curious about why Venetia's doing these things, then she'd have to recognize, like, oh, is she not getting enough attention? Is she upset? Is she having a hard time? Then that means something about my parenting. And I can't hear that because that crumbles my ego. So I just have to decide that Venetia is like a piece of shit. Something's wrong with her. That has nothing to do with me. I'm perfect. And so kids like Venetia get scapegoated because it protects the problematic parent's ego.
Yes. And then we have Felix, who is the peacekeeper. Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense with his helper mentality. Makes a lot of sense when people who are peacekeepers, they also try to be peacekeeping in other ways because it's a role that they feel really comfortable in. And that makes a lot of sense. And so I think it makes a lot of sense because as you notice throughout the film, Oliver is not the only boy that Felix has ever brought home.
Nope.
Like he probably collects wayward kids
and brings them home because he wants to help them, or whatever version of helping he thinks he can give them.
Well, he's bringing home people who are from more modest lifestyles and trying to let them kind of live the Saltburn lifestyle for a summer.
Yeah, like Like, enjoy yourself.
Like, that's going to save them.
That's going to save them or something. Yeah, it's a very naive and very young idea of saving someone. But I think it makes a lot of sense because we kind of see him be a peacekeeper, not only in his family, but also like he also sucks up all of the positive energy in the family. He's very much the golden child in a lot of different ways. And so I think that that's a part of why he becomes the peacekeeper in the family, because it certainly cannot be Venetia. And it's certainly not the dad, because he is so disconnected from the family that we don't even know if he knows what fucking day it is. Let alone what's going on with this family. And then we know that the mom, again, has a lot of characteristics of somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder. And in the ways that we see her presented in the film.
Correct. Dad is a means to an end for her lifestyle.
Yeah.
She married into his money.
And I think they work because she understands that and has no problem with it. Like, she actually seems very happy married to him.
She does.
And appeasing him. Like, she's good.
Yeah, she's fine because he stays out of her way.
Exactly.
And I think you're right that Felix has such a role in the family because he learned very well that giving mom whatever it is she wants and needs and being the way mom wants makes everything go well.
Yep.
And Venetia couldn't do that and resents him because of it, because he's the boy and mom never saw herself in him, but as someone that she can mold. All he had to do was be molded. Whereas Venetia had to be mom but not replicate mom.
Will not be competing with mom.
Not be competing with mom.
Yeah, you can't compete with her. Yeah.
But then as she would enter a sexual age, she would be therefore competing with mom. And mom would crush her, which she did. And nothing Venetia could ever do could be as thin or as powerful or as popular or as model-rific as mom. And so mom is also eternally disappointed and perfectly happy to keep her right there under her thumb.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that makes a lot of sense because I just feel like it makes a lot of sense for the mom to only see Venetia as competition. And is not to see her as a human or a child or someone that she should love and take care of. Also, we don't know if the mom even has that capability. I mean, they seem very loving towards Felix, but who knows how much of that is real.
I bet it switched when she became older. I think mom probably always was really hard on her, but like wanting her to be beautiful little pageant child or presentable child.
Yeah.
And that she probably was when she was pre-sexual, pre-pubescent. But once puberty hit, I suspect that changed and she became competition.
Yeah, which would make a lot of sense.
Because Felix's little friends would have been like, so, sup with Venetia? How's she doing? And what is the one caution that, what's the other kid's name?
Felix.
No, not Felix.
Felix is the brother.
Oliver.
The cousin.
Farley.
Farley strongly warned, do not mess around with Venetia. That's the fastest way to get thrown out of this house. But every person that's come into this house that has fallen into Venetia's lap or trap or whatever words he used was gone.
Yeah. Well, if Farley really knew what he was doing, he would have encouraged the Venetia and Oliver relationship. He just happens to catch them in the act and weaponize it immediately.
Yeah.
I think he encouraged her.
Venetia?
He attacked. He manipulated in his own way. He did something behind the scenes to. Like he alludes to it.
Oh.
It was quick, but he like basically alludes because that's when like the big blow up because it happens between the two of them. He's like he knew that he was fucking around and like manipulating him into stuff or manipulating the situation.
Okay.
He was planting seeds.
But I do think you bringing up Felix as the golden child, I think one thing I just want to touch upon with that is I think something that is so surprising about this movie that feels like it goes against the stereotype is how nice Felix is. I think in a lot of movies like this, Felix might be well-mannered and like charming and friendly in his own way, but for Felix to be so considerate when it comes to Oliver's place in the world, like before Oliver even like pretends to not have enough money, Felix is aware, and he calls Farley out on it, right? That like, that's dude, like he doesn't have money like we have. Like, don't be a dickhead. Like he can't afford to buy a round of drinks. Leave him alone. And then him, which I think you brought up, or you made mention of, Hannah, is the scene when he does show up Oliver to Saltburn for the first day, and Felix says, I got you a dinner jacket just so you didn't have to deal with the pain in the ass of bringing one with you. That he's very aware of how to say that in a way that doesn't make Oliver feel bad.
Yep.
Like he's so thoughtful and almost like hyper vigilant about making sure that Oliver specifically doesn't feel othered within their friend group and even in his home. And I think that I never thought of it in the context of what you just brought up, which is like him as like a peacekeeper and things like that, that when you are a peacekeeper within a dysfunctional family, how that can present is also having like what can appear as like heightened empathy as like a hypervigilant response.
Yeah, because I think a part of what I'm kind of postulating right now is that Felix might have had to fawn for his mother.
Oh, yeah. Always.
Right?
100% of the time.
Exactly. So also, when you have somebody who has to be in fawn a lot, I think, and maybe this is just like my own experience, but I've been told a lot about how nice and kind and whatever I am for a really, really long time, like since I was a kid. And with what we know about my background, right, like that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. But I think if you have to fawn a lot, you still have some awareness of what people are really feeling and what things can really feel like. And so I kind of feel like it's like a natural response for him to be that kind and that nice, based on him having to, and also being able to distinguish that his mother is being aware that she is mean. And that she does do unkind things, and that she does do mean things, and that he definitely has an awareness of that.
How she makes other people feel.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. He's hyper empathic.
Yeah.
And he's had to be.
Yeah.
You can't manage other people if you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
If you are focused on getting your needs met or going like, this is war, motherfucker, I don't care how you feel like. And I think where Oliver and Felix are foils for each other is, my hypothesis is Oliver would be that to his family, whereas Felix was the opposite. And that's why that Oliver is such an effective predator to Felix, is because he knows exactly how to press that button and throw Felix into the state that he naturally takes to and was conditioned into, whereas Oliver has learned, I will crush you.
Yeah.
And I will do so in whatever way I need to. And that's a really important difference to highlight when you look at two characters that are opposing each other, is the one that's preying on the other must be intelligent enough to see the part of the prey can't resist. And I think you're dead on. He's constantly fawning and constantly attending and doing it. Like that part of him, that caretaker part he's developed, has kept him so safe that he defaults to it.
I would say that's what shows up when he drives Oliver to his house.
Yeah.
To Oliver's actual house. And how well he's able to adapt to that situation, being very well mannered, like not wanting them to leave. I think he didn't want them to leave because he wanted Oliver to face it, but I think also he was probably paying attention to how he was making his mom and dad feel. And I think in that moment too, I think Felix was like, stay and be nice to your parents. They invited us here. They prepared a whole lunch. We're going to eat this fucking lunch because that's what nice people do. And then we're going to get in this car. And like, I think what is also so sad about Felix is he gives him so many opportunities. He really lets Oliver save face. He couldn't be nicer in the way that he, like, kinder in the way that he handles Oliver's deceit.
Yeah.
In that he's like, I'm still gonna let you have your party. I'm not gonna embarrass you in front of other people. Like, he's a little shitty at the party itself, but that's because Oliver's driving him nuts.
Yeah.
And pestering the hell out of him, right? And even at the end, like, I felt so sad. Like, even when Felix has drank the champagne, which is gonna kill him, and he hears Oliver throw up, even though he knows Oliver is on another level scary, he says, do you feel better? It's like Felix can't help himself but to fall into that role when he's around someone at all, but when he's around someone in distress. Like, I think that scene at the end with him and Oliver, I don't think he has it in him to really fight Oliver.
He doesn't.
Like, him being like, can you just leave me alone? I can tell that you're fucked. Maybe you need to go to therapy. Like, he is like really trying, which is like the sad part and interesting part of this movie, is that Felix is like this and not just like some schwarmy, talented Mr. Ripley type like pawn that you're kind of like, this fucking guy. Yeah. He can eat shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. No, and he wasn't. And they humanized him, and that's what makes it so effective to show how deep the callous evil runs in Oliver.
Yeah.
And how much of a game he is playing. I saw through this movie right away, but that point, like, at this point of the film, it became clear, like, once he put those antlers on, like, the true beast inside of him was coming out. And he's now free to play.
So we'll take another break here and we'll be back with treatment. All right, so we're all going to work with Oliver, right? What are we gonna do about Oliver, guys? I mean, something I guess we can say is that antisocial is very hard to treat, you know, because people with antisocial rarely seek out treatment voluntarily. It's usually more of a consequence of prison time, criminal behavior, or like a means to an end. Like couples therapy stuff. Like, I'll go to couples therapy to save my marriage, but I don't believe in it. Right? So we're not going to talk about Oliver. Sorry, everybody. Oliver is running around naked in his castle.
Oliver's not going to stop doing what he's doing.
Yeah, he's going to slowly pick off all the other rich people.
He may retreat into his own life. People that have become serial killers don't always continue killing. It's a myth that they do that. He may have completed his mission, his ideology, and be completely happy living out his life running around naked in his castle.
Storing cocaine, playing with puppets. Yep.
He may be good.
Yeah, that's true.
He may also ingratiate himself and continue his mission of destroying people and move through destroying planet after planet, system after system, like a locust.
Yeah, like a moth.
And I don't know. But what we see is there is nothing to treat here.
No.
In this character, because he's not going to want it. He will manipulate you. He will incorporate you into part of the system, and you become his Harley, or you become dead.
Well, and also too,
or
a lot of people they start therapy because they've hit whatever their version of rock bottom is, like the level of discomfort that they can no longer tolerate. And Oliver, I don't know if he has a rock bottom.
Yeah.
Oliver has ascended in this film.
Yeah.
And that is the last we see of Oliver. He is ascended.
He is arisen.
Yeah. No shit.
So who are we going to talk about instead of Oliver? I can throw it to you, Hannah, because I know you had some ideas that come off of what we just talked about.
Yeah, so I was thinking about, although now I think a little different, more differently about it than I thought originally at the beginning of the episode, but that's pretty normal. I was thinking about working with Venetia and Elsbeth, and I think the conclusion that I've actually come to while we've been discussing the film is that I don't know that I would recommend that they do treatment. I think mom would have to do a lot of treatment. Otherwise, it's the same idea as domestic violence. I'm supporting an abuser.
Well, you'd want to make sure that she is on board to behave herself in sessions.
Mom's not going to comply with treatment. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it'd be because it's not about her.
Well, you would have to make her recognize her ego.
Nope.
Like where she has let Venetia down.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that it would be. I think that it would be much more valuable to work with Venetia on her own.
I concur.
Yeah.
Than try and pull in. And my original thought was trying to pull them in together and really have some emotional connectivity with each other in one way or another. But I just don't think that this is I think this is a case where I say I can't work with you.
Yeah. It's more
because the work of keeping the mother in line would take the whole session and would start to be putting Venetia back in the corner, silent with no voice, the same way that she's always been.
Yeah, it would be really hard to be on both of their sides, because when you do family therapy, you have to be on everyone's side. And when you have like a person in the therapy space like Elsbeth, who would probably say wild stuff, like
just really devastating, upsetting.
She would try to make the jokes, kind of like when she was talking to Oliver, and she would kind of make jokes about her eating, just like Venetia's eating disorder. Like, what's the point of having one if you're not gonna even be thin, really that thin? And so I could see her falling into that in the family therapy, and then you would just spend like you were saying, so much time trying to do like psycho ed, but also that struggle of like, how do I keep rapport with Elsbeth without sacrificing Venetia?
Exactly.
And once you have start having those conversations, when you're doing like collaborative therapy, relational therapy, you usually have to like call it.
Yeah.
And I think where I'm saying nope, and 1000% with siding with Hannah here is that the version we see of Elsbeth has no interest. Not that people with narcissistic personality disorder can't evolve and be treated and be part of a system that can be treatable. This character has shown no effort whatsoever and no concern. And bringing her and Venetia into a session would be akin to sitting there with an abuser and abusee and going like, you're just gonna cause pain.
How do we compromise around the things that your mom is saying? You can't.
Exactly, which is often why, which I know I've talked about in the past, but it's often why working with a couple where there's domestic violence, it's a similar idea. I'm there to support both people, and we have to be equal with both people, and you can't do that when someone is abusing someone else.
And the power dynamic is not equal in the session or the relationship. Mom is not gonna surrender her power.
She has no reason to, right? She has no reason to.
Absolutely none.
So, yeah. So that's how my treatment would go.
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I think Venetia is the one who's the most vulnerable in the story.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Farley's a close second.
Yeah.
Which is who I would pick if I were to treat anybody, which I don't know that I would.
Sure.
But seeing as I'm only licensed in the United States and Farley's the only character who happens to be here.
A U.S. citizen?
A U.S. citizen who got sent back and is the only one besides our little murdery Joker friend here who does play the Joker or has played the Joker before this movie and will be the Joker going forward. So I'm not just making that up. He was in a cutscene from the Batman as the Joker, the most New Jersey Joker there's ever been, but there he is. Anywho, I think I would want to treat Farley. I think Farley is going to need a lot of trauma work, because I haven't said the T word the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. The free space middle square of our bingo card.
Right.
Yeah.
Did Ben say trauma yet? I said Batman a couple times, but not trauma.
Too many, some would say.
I don't know who.
Joker, I barely know her.
Right? I mean, I don't know, but I think I would want to treat Farley, because Farley's going to have survivor guilt. Farley's going to be trying to process how close he was to being able to cast this poison out and keep his life and wealth and connection alive, and not have to live in shame and poorness back in the United States. And he failed. And I think that's going to need a great deal of work and going to torture and destroy him, because it's not going to be looked at rationally on its own. The part of him that's going to feel responsible and having had this in his grasp to cast this poison out that he wasn't able to do is either going to be anger or guilt, or a rotating awful tornado of both. And sadness, of course. Like, it's going to be a lot of feelings that he's going to need to process and need to do a lot of work, and it's going to be a very multi-layered treatment. And given his already established propensity for substance abuse, I think my assumption is going to be he's going to fall quite deep into substance use after losing things, and he's going to need a lot of help to re-regulate the pull to dissociate away from all this pain and go into his already established habits of using cocaine and alcohol. And I think working on making sure he has a safe space to learn that he does have the ability to create new meaning in his life, even though it's not the high English society version of himself that he would like to be. This split identity he has of being a dual citizen, American and British, and having this dual identity and having been so close, but yet never really incorporated. So he hasn't had a chance to actualize, form his own identity, create a belief that there is a path to follow that leads to his success and happiness, even though it's not amongst the English high society, ungodly, wealthy lords. But that doesn't mean he can't have a powerful, effective, happy life. And I think that would be the person I'd want to treat in my goals for that person.
Well, yeah, Farley, I mean, we haven't touched upon him as much as everybody else, but, you know, he has a single mom who seems to be maybe blowing through money and like forcing him to like get on his hands and knees and like ask as part of her family that she's more closely related to like beg for money. So who knows, like I could also see a version of Farley like when he's back with his mom where maybe he's her caretaker and maybe he acts out when he's away and he can kind of be more like the carefree guy who does a lot of blow and fools around, right? I'm trying to think of who, because I would want to work with Venetia too, because she just seems like the saddest, especially I feel like after losing, let's say she survived Oliver, you know, after losing Felix, it does seem like Felix was her person in a lot of ways, which is probably his role too. He was very sweet to her. They have matching tattoos on their hands of stars, and he was probably her protector when he could be, and was very kind and affectionate and loving with her and protective of her. That could probably maybe even be part of the why he doesn't like when his friends fool around with her. She says it's because he doesn't like to share his toys. I wonder if he's like, don't mess with her, she's fragile.
I think it's that.
And she will try. And can you just be like a bigger, better person and like not take advantage of her? You know?
She's damaged. Stop it. You'll hurt her.
And he probably views it as like a character flaw, like a irreparable one when one of his quote unquote friends fools around with her. Right. And so I think she would be someone where I'd want her, if I was her therapist, I'd maybe say, like, let's say if I was already her therapist and then this Felix thing happens, I would say, hey, is there somewhere you can stay maybe? Is there like an aunt or a grandparent or I just think like getting her out of the house, out of that environment would be good for her.
Yeah, I think
Getting
so
her away
too.
from her mom. Like, she's someone that you would have to do a lot of like stabilizing around her, and luckily she does have a lot of resources, and so helping her with that. But I don't know. It feels like, I mean, she would be one of those people, and I think Felix would be like this too, where they would benefit from a lot of psychoeducation, both of them. Like, benefit a lot from like understanding their role in the family dynamic. Like, when I work with people who don't understand that what their parent was doing, like their mom, was inappropriate, if I'll use that generous language. And I've definitely had clients like that, when you can finally put like giving them an article about dysfunctional families and their roles, and they read those and are like, oh shit. Like, I think both of them, let's say if they both survive to adulthood, I think they both, Felix and Nisha, would probably have relationship problems. You know, for as sweet as, I mean, granted he's like 18, 19 in the movie, but for as sweet and loving he is, like Felix, he runs through girls, which is interesting. Like, he sleeps with girls and then he kind of just like discards them, which could be his age and the fact that he's a rich, hot, tall boy.
Sure. And
also, you know, maybe that's something else. Like, he doesn't want to have to take care of someone else in a relationship, a woman, or maybe. But
And
I think
they're not mom.
Yeah, but I think they'd be
And mom will
people
destroy them.
that they would both need individual therapy to find contentment as adults. And it might be one of those things where it's hard to do while their mom is still around. But they would definitely be people that I don't think I could effectively work with until they were older.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where my head was at with treatment, is like, if I work with Anisha or Felix, they need a lot of psychoeducation, a lot of terminology that you've talked about, Hannah. And they probably wouldn't go to therapy until they're older, and like romantic relationships were kind of falling flat, or maybe they just keep getting everything they want, right? Like going to Oxford, like probably dating other rich kids, right? And yet they still feel like something's wrong.
Or something's wrong.
And I think that's typically when people that have a lot of resources like they do will go to therapy, is like, why don't I feel good still? You know? So that's where I would go with treatment. So let's take one more break here, and then we'll be back with final thoughts. Okay, Ben, to go first, because I know what you're going to say. So just go first.
You know what I'm going to say? Was my face that I shared not enough?
This boy, and by boy I mean Ben, was like
Who's
messaging.
older than you?
Was
Child.
by like 6 months.
Year?
Oh my God. Was messaging Hannah and I while watching this movie, and just like, this movie's not good. I hate it. Blah, 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 blah. So yes, I kind of feel like I have an idea of what you're gonna say.
Well, you might, but I'm going to say it anyway. But you've met me, so it probably shouldn't surprise you. Is I hated this movie. When I watched the trailer to this, I wanted it to be, because I think whoever cut the trailer cut it very similar to the way the trailer for Parasite was cut.
Oh, okay.
And Parasite is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I was like, oh, good. Maybe somebody's going to try to make another movie like that. I'm here for that. Let's watch another one like this. And this was not that. Like, they tried to carry some of that in there. Like, you won't know what's going to happen until the end. You won't believe what's going to happen. And I was like, I called this shit within 10 minutes of this movie starting. Like, as soon as he started manipulating, like, this motherfucker is lying. He is so flat. Nope, he's gonna kill everybody. And he did. And I was not surprised or stunned with it at all. I think it was beautifully shot. I think it was very, very well acted. I think it was very well written. It just, my relationship with the trailer, I think, killed it for me, because I was expecting it to give me some kind of gotcha. And it absolutely didn't. I saw this shit straight through. And then also, I was extraordinarily suspicious of the film when you were like, no, we want to watch it with you. I'm like,
yes. You robbed us of that.
Yes, I did.
You did rob us of that.
Ugh.
Well,
Unfair.
my wife did pull the wife card and go like, no, I want to watch this today. I'm like, all right. She outranks everybody, so it's kind of sorry. That's just the way it is. But just the shock moments of this movie were just unnecessary and like gross, and I was like, what the fuck? Why? So this movie just didn't do it for me. And then you two to be like all into it, and other people being like, this is like the sexiest movie ever, and then me to see this shit and be like, the fuck is going on?
You are the first person I've talked to who does not love this movie.
Nope. I
just reconnected with an old friend, and I brought this movie up, and she went, that's my favorite movie. It's my husband's favorite movie. Like, you are literally, you and Caroline, your wife, are the only people I've talked to about this movie who didn't at least enjoy it and or love it.
A lot of people in my network are kind of the same as me and her, where we're like, the fuck? Like, it wasn't clever enough to justify the gross out, I think. That was it could just of like the why. It was all like very effective, very as a film, it did exactly what it set out to do, of fuck these fucking fuckers, let's eat them. Like, and let's do it in the most vicious way possible, and we'll destroy them from the inside. It did exactly what it set out to do, and I'll give it credit for that, but it is just not my jam.
Hannah?
So, I feel like this movie is entertaining. I feel like I agree with a lot of the things that Ben said about it's well acted, it's well shot, like it's a beautiful film. It's acted very well. And I also don't know if I would watch it again.
I would not.
Well, no, duh.
Well, no shit, Ben. But I don't think, not because I hate it or because I hate the characters, like I think I just don't need to see it anymore. Which is maybe just a personal thing about me and less about the film. But it was interesting. I thought that the stuff that they did was just different than other things. I don't think, but they definitely didn't catch me up in any way, shape, or form. Like, it felt very, I don't disagree with the fact that it felt easy to spot that Oliver had something going on and was not going to behave the way that we expected. But the shock moments felt very much like shock moments. Like, I felt very much like the movie knew what it was and knew what it was doing and did it pretty well. And so I don't love the movie. I don't hate the movie. I don't know if I would watch it again.
Okay. So I've seen this movie 5 times. I saw it in theaters by myself because I had heard wild reviews of it. So I wasn't sure what it would be like. And so when I'm not sure of a movie, I like to go by myself because I can get in my head about how other people that I bring to a movie are experiencing the movie, and it can take me out of it. So I had a big old smile on my face for most of this movie. I love what I call shenanigans, and I feel like this movie is shenanigans. And I very much pumped me up with all the shock stuff. I was like, oh my god.
What's that restaurant with all the shit on the walls?
If you say shenanigans one more time, I'm gonna take my gun out and pistol whip you. But I love this movie. I don't know if I'll watch it a ton more after we've dissected it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's fun to watch the first time, and it's fun to show to people because of the shocky stuff in it.
Yeah.
I think this movie is campy. I think this movie is unknowingly audacious. It's like a maximalist movie. Like, it looks like a maximalist aesthetic. The story is maximalist, which is very much my jam. When I saw trailers for it, I actually thought it was like Talented Mr. Ripley. So I knew going in, I was like, this kid's bullshitting. When he said his dad was dead, I was like, lies. I wasn't sure how much he was lying about his family.
Sure.
I could definitely say he's laying it on thick.
Yeah.
And when he said my dad died, I was like, bullshit, because I think this movie doesn't try to pretend like Oliver isn't bullshitting.
Yeah.
Like the beat of like, you're getting ostracized, and then all of a sudden the next day something happens with your family that gets you in. Like, I don't think the writer was worried about telegraphing that stuff, because that's not the point. I think the point of the movie was, I thought it was sexy. I thought a lot of the stuff was sexy. I think Barry Keoghan can really lay it on, turn it on, and like riz all over the place, as they say. I love the look of it. Like you guys were saying, so many shots of it where like I could screenshot and like have as like a wallpaper. And I like Emerald Fennell's attitude is very much like this too. She's very like the girls who get it, and the girls who don't. And when they asked about like the period scene where he goes down on the girl in her period, and she was like, why? Like the people were asking her, and she was like, I don't know. It's like she was like, well, she said part of it was obviously to show his norms, right, and how far he'd go. But she's like, also, I thought it was sexy. And I was like, see, I feel like I'm on the same wavelength as you, girl. And so I like this movie. I think it's fun. I don't take it very seriously. I think the biggest disadvantage of this movie is that it was lauded as like Academy Award winning, and like people were really like putting it up on this pedestal like Parasite-ish, and I was like, just let this movie be a movie. Let this movie just be a fun, wacky movie with twists and turns and scandal and sex, and like a Lifetime movie on steroids with like a huge budget and cinematography.
That's pretty much what it is.
And that is, I love. And I love when a movie just goes for it, and this movie goes for it, and it isn't concerned about
it does.
How it'll put people off. It just isn't. Right? And I love that. And it's an original story, and I wish more people would do that. So I will probably watch this movie again just because I guess really like it.
You guess?
I do.
As you wax poetic on about it?
Yeah. And so if you guys also like this movie, you know, write us an email. Put it in the comments. Tell Ben why he's wrong. You know what I mean?
That'll make my wife happier than us watching the movie. So please do that.
So on that note, I think, do we have anything more we want to say about Saltburn?
I think all we have to say is thank you for listening to us for 7 seasons worth of this show. Season. And for supporting us, and for those of you that have come up to say hi to us when you've seen us at events or have been patrons of us. Anyway, those of you who have supported us along the way, we are really thankful, and this show has taken off in ways that we could never have imagined.
That's definitely true.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as always, if you are looking for us, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Popcorn Psychology. You can find us on Twitter/X at popcorn_psych. You can always email us at popcornpsychology@gmail.com. That's the best way to get a response from us if you're wanting to suggest a movie or things like that. As always, if you want to help support us, you can become a Patreon patron. You can also buy merch from us at tpublic.com. We really appreciate that. And always, like Ben had said earlier, if you would like to leave us a review wherever you listen, that is the best way for new listeners to find us. We really appreciate it. If it could be 5 stars, we would love that.
And also, as you consider those reviews, please remember that unlike other podcasts that happen to be in the same categories as us, we have no producers.
Yeah.
We are literally sitting in a basement in my house.
Surrounded by children's toys.
That is so accurate. There's like an entire Barbie dream house and a little ride-on pony and all kinds of children's nonsense. We don't have producers. We don't have things. So all this stuff that we're doing ourselves as a completely indie show.
Yeah.
And we're just so excited for you guys' support and 5-star reviews.
Thank you so much.
If you have a 3-star review, just feel free to write it for some other show.
Yeah, so as always, find us if you can. Reach out to us if you would like to. As always, if you want to become a Patreon patron and you want to do $50 or more, you can pick the episode that we talk about. Recently, we did an Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind episode, finally, and that was because of Kayla, one of our patrons. So, everybody, find your local rich family and I guess annihilate them. Welcome to the 7th season, y'all.